you've probably seen this online, that there is like some people just pushing back at people using like 10 plugins on a vocal or something like that. And then there's other people who are like, but it's part of the creativity. Like you say, when you're moving fast and you're making decisions as you hear them, it doesn't matter if you've boosted like 200 in the vocal in one EQ and then compressed it and then later you've tucked 200 out of it again. Like, it's what felt right in the moment as you were going. And it's the same thing that people look at EQs and think, oh, I shouldn't do this EQ curve because that doesn't look right. It's like, fuck what it looks like. If it sounds good, that's the whole point.
Welcome to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I'm your host, Drew. Super excited to have you with us. I'm super excited for this guest today, Eliott. My man, I've been trying to get this podcast to happen for a bit, and then I got sick, and I'm really sorry. I want to apologize. And now, but we've made it happen. You're here.
Yeah.
Very excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, super excited to be on, and thank you for that, mate. And I'm glad you're feeling better as well now.
Yeah, we're making it here in my household.
Yeah, making it work.
Yeah, we're making it happen. So if you just want to take a second, kind of let the people know who you are, what you do, kind of like who generally do you work with, genre-wise or anything like that. Like, floor is yours, man.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name's Eliott. I'm a mixing and mastering engineer, currently living in West London. I typically work with indie folk, pop artists, that kind of genre, although I do like to work on a number of different genres, as most people do as music fans. But yeah, I've been doing this now for, professionally 2-3 years, but longer than that, probably about 5, 6, 7 years really on Instagram, trying to build the profile up, get my name out there. So yeah, it's been a long old road, but super grateful to do this full time now and connect with awesome people online and work with people all over the world. So yeah, feeling pretty blessed.
Beautiful, man. I really think that it's always, I say the same thing to everybody. It's like, they're like, how long have you been doing this? And I was like, well, depends. Like, what point are you talking about? It's like full-time, like 2 or 3 years. Full-time hours, probably like 5 or 6 years. The music thing, like 8 or 10 years. Yeah. So it can kind of depend on, like, there's always the time that you start taking it seriously, and then there's the time that you're like, okay, I'm doing full-time hours but not full-time pay, and I'm trying to make it work. And then there's the time where you're like, oh yeah, finally, this is all I'm doing now. Yeah,
that's it. And it's a long road. I think a lot of people start as well, like myself. I started playing guitar when I was like 8 years old, got into doing all that, and then you get in the band when you're in like your teen years and stuff, and then you want to record, you want to have some tunes and put them out online or share them with your friends, so you learn how to record, and then you fall in love with the recording side, and then it's just this like deep dive from there into all things music creation, recording, production, mixing, mastering, all of that. And then so from the age of like literally probably about 13, 14 to I'm 32 now is when I'm like, I do mixing and mastering.
30 gang, baby. Let's go.
It's the 30s are the new 20s for sure.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. But it's a long old road to get to the point. But I think that's a good kind of message to put out there for people listening, is that it's not an overnight success in this business. These things take a long, long time, and you have to put in consistency and show up daily, monthly, yearly, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh crap, yeah, I'm doing the thing now. I'm doing well with it. So yeah, just keep at it.
Dude, so it's funny. I was telling you before we started about I had an in-person podcast today, and I told him this story. Are you a big fantasy reader? Do you read like books a lot?
I do, but mostly kind of physical ones. I've been trying to get back into it again, but yeah.
Yeah, so Brandon Sanderson, you know Brandon Sanderson, the author, Mistborn, the Stormlight Archive, like those kind of big books.
Yeah, heard of him. I haven't actually read any of the...
Would highly recommend. I'm a big fan personally. I'm going through the Stormlight Archive right now, and it's really cool. But he did an interview with Tim Ferriss recently, and the legend podcaster Tim Ferriss, and they were going through like how he kind of got to where he was, and you'll find this really interesting, talking about like playing the long game with like a creative endeavor. So, dude got the advice of, hey, your first 5 books are going to be garbage. And he was like, cool, I'll write 6, then I'll start pitching to distributors and editors and all that kind of stuff. Well, like a book for a fantasy author is you're sitting around like 100,000 words, which is like 350 pages, something like that. And to write 6 of those is crazy. There's 5 of those that you're just never going to release. That's nuts. Then he proceeded to say, and then I started pitching the 6th one. I continued to write. I didn't stop at the sixth one because, you got to always keep doing the thing. I'm a writer, I write. So, that's the thing I do. So I continued to work and continued to write books and didn't get the book number 6 picked up until he had written book 12.
That's mental. Book 12.
Book 12 of that. So, dude, that's like on average 100 to 200,000 words per book. That's like 300-ish thousand words written, non-published, until he got his first. And then he proceeded to say the check he got was $10,000 for his first book. After writing that much. So that will forever be my example of like, do the thing, find the thing that you love, do that thing, and just keep on trying. And if you're good, if you keep getting better, if you keep making connections and building, the gradual network of, whatever, and making the thing happen, like, you'll get there. And that check is probably going to be smaller than you think it is, and it's going to be still worth it because you're getting paid now to do the thing that you love. Exactly.
That's it. It's all about just outlasting kind of everyone else once you get to that point. There'll be so many people that would have written 2 books or 3 books or 1 book and given up. And it's like, no, I'll do 6 books, and then it won't be till my 12th that the 6th one actually gets picked up.
It's the zombie mentality, right? It's the it's the outlast them. It's like, if I can run faster, all I got to do is run faster than the slow person and more consistently.
There is so many people like that, I think, who are at the top of their game now in the industry, whatever it is, production, recording, mixing, all of that kind of stuff. Those are the people that just lasted. They stuck it out because you go through a lot of shit. There's a lot of ups and downs. And then it's just like, can you keep persevering? Do you have the love for it so much that you're just like, whatever happens, I'm going to keep doing this? And that's why it's so key to kind of find that part of the creative process that you love. Because if it's just... if you're trying to do just mixing or just mastering, then you should do it for the love, not for the money. It should just be pure passion, and it will take you where you need to go.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like business sense that has to come along with that for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Like that's not, I think if the buck stops there, like you don't get like longevity for sure. No. But as long as I think that's your starting point. I think that's a great starting point. It's like, do it for the love, do it for the passion. Cool. Now we got to take it and like kind of branch into the what does it look like to actually build a business and make money out of that passion. But as long as that's at the core, then cool, we can work with that.
Yeah, and that's where it will last, is because you already have that passion. So it's the driving motivator is not money, it's the passion for doing it. And then you go, all right, I love doing this. I'm spending all my time doing it. But how do I make money out of it now? Let me think about that and start learning. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me. The biggest change for me was when I started to think about how can I turn this passion of making music into a business. There's so many videos on YouTube about how to mix and how to produce and how to master. That's covered. There's not a huge amount about the business side of things. There's a few podcasts that do it and talk about it, but the whole business side of running a creative business there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to cover, and there's not so many books out there about it. You're kind of stealing from other, your kind of other markets and trying to figure out how they've done it as well. But
you're doing your Gary V's, your Alex Hormozzi's, and then like your Simon Sinek's on like mentality and business and all those kind of things, and like saying, I need to force this into this mold of music production.
Yeah, like how can I apply this about scaling an agency into my one-person solo production business? It's
but you'd be surprised at how much. Actually, one of the books that did the most for me was Alex Hormozzi's Leads book.
Yeah, it's an amazing book.
$1 Million Leads. Oh my gosh, man! Because like the offers book was also really good for different reasons, for sure. Yeah. But I was already pretty confident in like the offer I was bringing to the table at that point. At least like at the time when I had read it. But the problem for me had always been like, I understand how to get leads, but then like the funnel part of like getting them through this thing is, we don't learn that. We're plucking around on a guitar. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're not meant to that's not a thing that really comes up a whole lot on the creative side. And so to have a dude just like lay it out as bare as possible like that in that book was honestly massive for me. I think I read that a couple years ago when it came out, and like I honestly, it's about time for me to return it and tweak my systems a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you'll keep coming back to and picking up new things, and you implement something, see if it works, try it. But you're so right. The way he communicates specifically is super clear. Like, I think he kind of writes it, I don't even know what level, but there's the kind of the most easy to understand business book you'll ever read. And it's going to make you able to attract leads, keep leads, you know, work through all of the kind of funnel parts, like you say, the back end of it. I think that's such a crucial part of running a business, is running one that is kind of invisible to your clients and your leads. I often get compliments on how smooth the process is of working with me, because I have automations in place and I have kind of Calendly called schedulers and things like that set up. So it's just super simple to work with me. And all of that stuff is through reading these business books and implementing stuff, being like, right, if I reduce friction, it's going to be a smoother process for them. They're going to enjoy it more. They're more likely to come back. They're more likely to recommend me to somebody else. And again, that's the kind of stuff that you only learn by trial and error. You read about it, you try and implement something, and then kind of keep iterating as you go.
I got to shout out previous guest of the podcast, John McLucas. He's the guy that actually taught me a lot of that stuff when we started working together. 2017, 2016, something like that. Whenever he was first making his shift from doing all metal stuff to like going into like more of the pop world, like that pivot. I was doing a lot of additional production work at that time, and we were working together a lot. And I was always impressed with like same what you're talking about. It's like the process of like whenever we would have to hop on a call, or how we would do production stuff, or how we would work revisions with each other and stuff like that. It was always very impressive to me, even at that stage. And I'm sure like now he's got even a much better system, but but even me coming from nothing to his some semblance of a system, I was like, oh, you could do this and make it not look crappy, and it doesn't have to take like a ton of time. Like, it can actually be pretty simple if you take the time to think about it and just learn how the process needs to work. So shout out John for teaching me that like forever ago.
Yeah, having that kind of stuff implemented and shown to you is so crucial. Like, there's little steps I do where, again, I have Calendly set up, so if people want, well, I actually use a bit of software called Dubsado, which kind of does all that stuff in the background, which I love, and the automations and stuff. But one of the key things was I was thinking, right, where's some friction in the whole process? And one of the parts is getting files from clients to me. And so I've made a Dropbox request folder, which I have a pre-written email template, which I'll send them. And there's a big orange button saying, upload your files here. But before that, I've got some text saying, like, before you do that, if you use Logic Pro, watch this video to prep the session and hand it to me. If you don't, read this here. And it just takes all of the guesswork out of it for the artist, so they're not spending hours and hours trying to figure out how to do it. I've already shown them, and it's super simple. They don't have to use WeTransfer or Google Drive. It's like, right, drag and drop into Dropbox, it lands in my computer. And all of those things just speed up the process, make it smooth as hell for them, make it really easy for me, so I'm not troubleshooting problems. So yeah, any part of the process you can think that, like, am I doing this the smartest way? Is there an easier way? Is there a quicker way? Is there a smoother way of doing it? Then yeah, it's worth looking at that.
So are you mainly a Logic Pro user?
Yeah, exclusively. I've got Studio One, and I've used Ableton and Pro Tools a little bit in the past, but yeah, just exclusively Logic Pro. I'm so quick at it now. There's just
parts of me wish that I came up using Logic more, because now I get into it and I'm so in Pro Tools or Ableton that it's like my brain just does not compute with how the way Logic functions. And like recently I've had to like get a couple sessions and like figure out some stuff with Logic, and like I've had to set up some places here in town where it's like I've had to pull sessions from or whatever, and it's like I just cannot, my brain just doesn't do it. But I love Logic's native plugins. Actually,
they're great.
They have some incredibly good. I compare it only to Ableton in that sense of like some of the best built-in stuff that I've had friends make full records on, like stock Logic Pro everything and like a good mic, and that's kind of it.
That's all you need. You're so right. The stuff that it comes with, so all the instruments, all of the kind of loops, all of that kind of stuff, all of the plugins are incredible, and you can make amazing music. And again, it's down to your creativity. There's no gap. There's no limits there put on you with all the stuff that's kind of stock with it. And for $200, I think it is. It's a ridiculous kind of.
Versus Ableton, that like the version that you would actually want is like $500, and then the big boy version's like $8. And like that's the version I have now. And what's crazier is like having to buy upgrade every single time. They have me locked in at this point, and I can't get away.
Yeah, that's it. They've got you now. You're going to keep spending that. But I bought Logic Pro 9. Yeah, it would have been 9 back in 2014. I think it was 2014, 15. Whenever I was at uni, and that's it. I haven't had to pay for the upgrade of Logic ever. It's just they keep giving me stuff for free.
Dude,
so
amazing. It's not like Pro Tools either. I'm on that. I have to have a monthly subscription to use Pro Tools.
Yeah. Again, it's just that stuff that feels criminal. That feels criminal to have to pay.
I hate it so much to do my job. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now I could function.
Got enough of that with plugins.
I know. Well, I could function off of like the version of Ableton that I have probably for a really, really long time, but I just don't. I just don't like having to pay to upgrade. Like same thing, like you said, it's like our plugins are already subscription killer. I've actually slowly this past year started trying to get some of that out. I don't know about you.
Yeah, same.
Like I never really use Slate. I know that one's a big one for a lot of people.
No, that was my first one to go. I was like, yeah, I need to get rid of this now. Yeah.
I know a lot of people use it, and it's a lot of the reason that people are like, that one is the one that they're like, I can't get rid of that one. All of my stuff is already locked into like their system already. And it's like, I use the VSX stuff and I have a Slate mic, but those don't require you to pay for the monthly subscription. It's just, it comes with the plugins that you need for it. And so I'm not trying to pay that much, but then you have that, Waves tried to, and then everyone got really mad about it. And
that was hilarious.
That was really funny. And then SSL has one. I know some people that like it. I'm not. I don't use their stuff. And then what's another one?
UAD have got their one now, which UADX and the Plugin Alliance.
And the Plugin Alliance bundle.
Yeah, those are the two that I use mostly now, is UAD and Plugin Alliance, because to me they just sound really good, and they've got a thing to them which I really enjoy. But yeah, the Slate one was the first after Waves. Everyone gets Waves first, and then I got the Slate bundle, and I was like, oh, these are amazing. And over time I've just been like, I just don't enjoy the sound of them. I don't enjoy the workflow that much, and I feel like
feels
UAD
very clunky
stuff
for some reason. Yeah, even though it looks really nice, like it's beautifully, like very pretty.
Yeah,
but I just don't. It just feels clunky for some reason. I don't know why.
It does. I don't like the 1176 plugins. I don't think they sound good.
The Waves one sounds better.
Yeah, the Waves one is amazing. Like
it sounds just great. The Blueface Waves one is amazing.
Yeah, and just the fact that you can swap between the black and the blue in one plugin is incredible. I wish like UAD would do that, or other ones, because it's just, you would just want to try it. You're like, is this going to be better or worse? Okay, it's better. Stick with the blue one, or whatever. You swap.
I wish they did that, because I know UA has variations of the 2A as well, and like the same thing. I wish they would put it all in one plugin, and then I could swap between like the variations of 2A or 3A that they have, like the Legacy and the other one, and then there's like a blackface one or whatever that I don't really know.
They've got a few different ones.
Yeah, but it's like I only have like 2 of them, but I think I wish like being able to hot swap those like in immediately. And obviously it's going to change the sound a little bit, and I think even the Waves one, like the Blueface one is brighter and hotter somehow, and the blackface one is like darker and but has like a faster attack or something. I don't remember. It's something like that. Something like that. But it is pretty significant. But even just like the tonal shift, you can be like, that's what I'm looking for versus the other one.
Yeah, that's it. It's that kind of moving quickly. And I think learning your tools like that, so knowing that, if I reach for the blue one, it's going to have this more aggressive mid-range forward thing, whereas the black one's a bit smoother, a bit more rolled off or whatever, is so crucial. And I know that when I first started, I was so taken in by plugin marketing, thinking I needed all these different plugins and all of these different sounds and stuff. Whereas really now you kind of go full circle where you don't know how to use any of the plugins. Then you start using all these different ones and you think you're doing amazing mixes and you're like, actually, no, this is just making it all worse. And now you come back to using a channel strip and a couple of the same compressors all the time. Like
the Neve, the SSL channel strip or the Neve channel strip from Waves.
Yeah.
And then like a couple Plugin Alliance channel strips that you need. Yeah.
That's 100%. It. That's all you need. You just need an EQ and a compressor 99% of the time. And then
as long as you're tracking good. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good point, actually. I've been thinking about that a lot more recently in terms of a lot of the stuff I get sent to me for mixing is obviously not recorded in a proper studio. People do it in a home studio, and that's fine. But I've been trying to think a bit more about like doing some tracking style processing first on things like vocals. So putting a preamp model on there and then through like a CL1B to get that tracked sound, and then going into my normal kind of vocal chain after the fact. So I feel like I'm using it, an actual
like a console or something.
Yeah, a console that's been recorded in a proper studio, and then I'm doing my processing instead of trying to fix it and do all this mad stuff. And that's been working out quite well.
I found, so I'll reiterate that point too. Like I do a thing for vocals that's very similar, where it's like because I mix in Pro Tools, I produce in Ableton, I mix in Pro Tools, just to like mentally keep those more like creative and analytical brains like separated. Oh my goodness, dogs.
Love it.
The Pro Tools has like 2 6 bays for each like plugin instance, basically. So I have the left side is how it should be tracked. So like the chain I would like it to be tracked in, and then the right side is all mixing based stuff. So like mentally I can keep those like separated. So I will like literally do that. I do it on it's mainly guitars, because a lot of times I get DIs, or if I need to change stuff around, like if it's not mic'd well or whatever. Not so much on drums, sometimes on drums. That is kind of genre dependent, to be honest. Like in metal, I'll do that a little bit more because the drums need to be processed and then reprocessed again for the mix. So it's a little different. But vocals, I almost always do that exact same thing, where it's like, okay, I'm going to make the vocal itself sound really good on this side. All right, now it's time to like actually mix the vocal.
Yeah. And you're doing, like you say, what would have been done in the studio back in the day, or had they gone to a more pro studio, and then you're still being able to get the control over both sections, but it's thinking about them differently. And obviously that's where people do a lot of serial compression when it comes to vocals, and I'm the same. And I think that is, you're trying to approximate the same thing there, which is they recorded with one kind of compressor on, and then I'm adding this other compressor for tone or a different kind of compression. And it's good to think about it in that sense. So you're, like you say, you're kind of treating both areas, the tracking and the mixing, but in one session. Yeah.
Now it turns into your plugins looking crazy, like your plugin chains looking crazy. It's like, well, why am I doing this here and this here and this here? It's like, it's just the way that my brain works. So it's just faster if I just do weird little notches here and big wide swaths here, even though they may counterbalance each other in some aspect. But I just need to, like, I'm working in a serial line linearly.
Yeah, just going through it. I think you've probably seen this online, that there is like some people just pushing back at people using like 10 plugins on a vocal or something like that. And then there's other people who are like, but it's part of the creativity. Like you say, when you're moving fast and you're making decisions as you hear them, it doesn't matter if you've boosted like 200 in the vocal in one EQ and then compressed it, and then later you've tucked 200 out of it again. Like, it's what felt right in the moment as you were going. And it's the same thing that people look at EQs and think, oh, I shouldn't do this EQ curve because that doesn't look right. It's like, fuck what it looks like. If it sounds good, that's the whole point.
My buddy Scott says that all the time. He says, bro, your EQ should look like that scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the strings are everywhere, and it should look like that sometimes. As he mixes like more intense like metal music, and he said if you're gonna work in insane genres, you have to make insane moves sometimes, which it was like a wild quote, to be honest, but like what a cool way to think about it, right? It's like, Oh yeah, it's a creative thing. Sometimes you do just have to like push a weird notch at 4K because that's just what sounds right, or you have to suck all of the mid-range out because it's just the way that it is, and it's got to be minus 12 dB on like a 4Q thing in this weird specific area. Yeah, and it's
exactly.
like I'm doing that because of what I'm hearing, not because of any specific way, because it looks wrong, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. People will be like, well, you've already got 3 or 4 plugins on while you're adding another on. It really doesn't matter. It's just about the thing. And then you'll get tracks where it's recorded really, really well and it fits the part perfectly. So it's got a high pass filter on your EQ and that's it. And then there's other ones where you're like, no, it needs some saturation and it needs this compressor in parallel and it needs this widener thing because that's what it needs to fit in the mix and to make it sound like I want it to sound. So yeah,
and appropriate for the genre too sometimes as well. It's like you're not going to mix a lot of country. I'm not going to mix that the same way that I mix a heavy song, and they're going to feel different. You're going to use less stuff on a country record because it's probably going to be tracked. I mean, the stuff that I get's tracked like
amazing.
Some of the best tracks I've ever heard. I need to send you some. Some of the best tracking I've ever heard in my entire life, stems wise. But then like I'll get metal stuff and it's like a DI MIDI drums and like a vocal into an S7B that's being clipped half the time. And it's like those are going to be approached very differently.
Yeah, exactly. There is no one size fits all, and like who wants there to be anyway? That's the whole joy of this. Like you say, it's such a creative. It's an art. It's an art at the end of the day, and it's all about being creative. And why would you want to stifle yourself being like, maybe I shouldn't put this EQ on there because I've already got one on there before? It's like, just go with what your gut feels. And at the end of the day, all that matters is what comes out of the speakers. So if it sounds good, then it is good. And how you got there is no one is ever going to go, oh, I really love that song. Can I just look at the session to see how you mixed it? Like only your nerd friends who enjoy this stuff anyway are going to do that. Like the average listener doesn't care. So just go for it.
No, for sure. Well, I'd love to talk about how you kind of found the genre that you primarily do, which is like kind of indie-based music, really. Yeah,
that's a really good question. It's basically the genre that I've always listened to from a young age. I've listened to a lot of stuff, to be fair. I did listen to a lot of kind of nu metal growing up and punk and funk and reggae and stuff. I loved all of that. But the one constant that I kind of always went back to was this indie folk stuff, just a singer-songwriter. That's what I've just always enjoyed. I started, like I say, playing guitar when I was 8 years old and started writing songs from that point. So I think it's just always been where my brain feels happy listening to that stuff. So that's what I kind of primarily work on. And again, I put myself out there as a guy that mixed indie folk and pop. That was what I branded myself as. So once you start putting yourself out there, and that's why I think it's important to niche down a bit at the start, at least, to kind of allow people into your world and to know exactly what it is that you do and feel like they can trust you. If you just say, I mix all kind of genres, everyone's going to go, but do you? Like, do you do that well? Whereas if you have a kind of segment of the pie that you're like, this is what I do, people will be more happy to work with you. And then you've got more examples of, you can be specific in the examples you show. So just typical singer-songwriter stuff, quite broad again. So some stuff that's more just singer-songwriter all the way to full band, big productions. But anything like that.
If you had to give me some like bigger artist examples of like kind of where, because for the people that might not know like that genre style or anything like that, just maybe some examples like they could quickly go look up and check out.
Yeah, like literally the kind of Bon Iver stuff, Ben Howard, Sufjan Stevens, that kind of stuff. Anything in that area, I tend to really love working on. And that said, again, I do work on some more kind of R&B stuff as well and some pop things, but that's kind of my typical wheelhouse is the indie folk stuff.
That's I've recently got into a little bit more of that stuff, mainly because like I've been having pop artists that I work with like reference more indie folk kind of rap stuff. Bon Iver being the main one. I've recently got into Half Moon Run. Have you ever listened to them before?
I've listened to a few of their stuff. I'm terrible for listening to music at the moment because all I do is work on music. So I don't spend much time exploring. But
their album Salt would highly recommend like checking it out from like a folk pop kind of blend. It's very well produced. I think French Canadian band. I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Super interesting and like good melodies. And I showed it to Brad, who owns the studio here in town that I co-work with, and we were walking through it, and he was like, "Dude, if I could get a project like this for my guys, because we have like band tracking guys at the studio that are like
Right.
for country, pop, rock session work guys." And like, if I could get my guys a session like this, they would go nuts. This would be crazy. But yeah, it's very much in that. I'm starting to get more of those people kind of referencing weirder niche like stuff like that, which is honestly pretty cool for me.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a trend going on, or has been going on for the last 5-10 years, probably since Bon Iver's Forever
Ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that just really set a fire underneath people's asses, really. And that kind of stuff now, everyone's wanting that more organic, rough around the edges kind of vibe, but still with a pop feel a lot of the times, and that more organic textures, real live instruments paired with some electronic stuff. It's just a real cool space to be in right now, listening to that kind of music.
It's kind of happening on both ends, right? It's like pop music's getting it more. And then, but you're also seeing like kind of the other side of it, like if you're a bluegrass fan or a folk fan, like, and like Punch Brothers or Nickel Creek, it's like they've like leaned more into like it's bluegrass still, pop, folk, whatever, like that kind of stuff, but like the mixes are very like pop.
Right. Okay.
Like it's like production wise, like everything's a lot more like friendly to what would be considered pop music, I guess. It's very interesting. You can kind of see both ends starting to converge a little bit more.
Yeah.
But then also country like makes this hard pivot out to being like your Tyler Childers, your Zach Bryans, of like very raw, Oliver Francis, like one dude, one mic, a guitar or a banjo, vocal only, and that's the song. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, it's cool that we kind of have this. I do think the last couple of years we've seen a branch into what I would consider a lot more, I guess rawness would be the term, but like, I don't know, trying to be more open to like being just kind of what it is.
Yeah, instead of trying to make it a polished thing. And you see this, there's like trends in the industry. There's constantly trends in the industry, things changing, where there's like a sound and then people love it, and then there's a lot of it for a number of years, and then there's somebody comes along and rebels against it, and then they become more popular, and that kind of sound people kind of copy. So it's just that cyclical thing in the industry that we see a lot of the time.
So you're primarily mixing and mastering?
Yeah, that's basically it. I do the occasional production job where I feel like I'm appropriate for it, but yeah, majority of the time it is just me sat in this room mixing, mastering, and connecting with people, through Instagram, like we connected, and chatting like this. So it's a joy that I'm able to do this from my bedroom studio here in London.
So what was your as far as like educational background coming up? Self-taught, learn in uni, or what was the guide there?
I'm majority self-taught, I would say. I did music tech at school, and then I did it at college, and then went to university for music production. But all of that was super broad. There wasn't very, we didn't dive into the technical aspects of mixing and mastering, things like that. And it was only since leaving uni that I just really fell in love with the whole process of mixing, and just went down the YouTube rabbit hole of learning as much as I could. So yeah, I would say, entirely self-taught really from that point of view. And then, you try all these different things, and through trial and error, working with bands as well has been the biggest thing for me in terms of my learning, because you could sit at home with some multi-tracks and mix it, and you could think it sounds good. But when you get a band set of multi-tracks and you mix it and you send it back, then the feedback that they give you just levels up your game over and over and over again. So just working with people has been it's given me the biggest leap forwards in my technical skills and my confidence and my abilities, I'd say.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, like the feedback loop of like, it's different when it's other people, right? And like being able to figure out how to shorten that feedback loop of I'm gonna do a thing and I'm gonna get feedback on it from not myself, somebody else. And it same thing works on the artist perspective or producer perspective as well. It's like, is this good? Yes, no. How can I make it better? Try this. is this now good? Yes, no. You know what I'm saying? And like getting that is like, it's kind of an addicting feeling, to be honest.
For sure.
It's like, oh yeah, this worked. No, let's try this little thing and see if that makes it work. And like, as long as everybody's still like stoked on it, I think it's a good time all the way across. That's when people don't get stoked on it, is when it starts to become more of an issue. But
yeah, definitely. And that is a huge part of the learning process for me, was when I first started working with artists, and they would send me tracks, and I wouldn't ask for any references, and we wouldn't get on a phone call before. I still consider myself quite an introverted person, so like I used to just like doing things by email and text when I first started, but then I wouldn't get any direction from them, so I'd mix it how I thought it sounded great, and I was like, send it back to them, and then there'll be just a ton of revisions, because it was just like I hadn't taken the time to learn what they wanted and understand their vision for it, so then I could implement it, put that through my ears and my skills and stuff. So yeah, learning to make those changes that bands want, but also understanding what their vision was in the first place, just shortens that like you say, that feedback loop, where you can just be like, right, I understand what it is you want, let me go away and do it, and then we can come back and be like, cool, you want these changes, happy to do it, you want these changes, happy to do it, but at least we're on the right track. I'm not going off over this direction when you went off over here.
You're on a totally different part of the world trying to do that. Yeah, exactly. I would love to hear, and maybe this can be twofold. I would love to hear kind of like an onboarding process with you for people, and this can be for either another producer that might want to implement a similar thing, or potential clients that might like, oh yeah, this Eliott guy is really cool. Seems like a pretty cool dude, and that's my genre. I'd like to work with him. So let's talk about so artist is interested. Maybe let's say finds you on Instagram, hits your email, go.
Yeah, so the first way would be, if they do that, they'll go through my website, and there'll be a simple form, which is just name, email, and then what service they want. Based on what service they want, if it's mixing, mastering, or both, there'll be a different automated form sent to them, so I can get more information. So that will be, how many songs you're looking to work on, what's your genre, can you show me previous examples of your work, budget range, do you have a deadline? So I've got that kind of low friction form on the front, so it's easy for them to fill out, followed up by this questionnaire, and then I'll have a look at it. If I think I'm a good fit, then I'll fire off an email saying, love the sound of your stuff, book a call with me at a time that suits you, and then we can have a chat about it. And then we'll just have a talk for like 40 minutes about the song, their vision, all of that kind of stuff, go through what they expect from me, what they're looking for from me, if it's just take the tracks and elevate them slightly, or like we were saying, completely kind of enhance them as if they needed to be tracked and retracked and that kind of stuff. But yeah, from that point, I'll get the files from them, and then I'll always tell them when they can expect a mix back from me. So I like to be really clear about deadlines and things like that. I don't want it to be like, yeah, you'll get it in a couple of weeks. It's like, no, you'll get it from me next Wednesday and then I'll make sure that I always send it by then, if not earlier.
But and you aim for next Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I'll always try and, under promise, over deliver. And then I use Mix-Up as my file delivery system, which is basically the same as Sampling and all these other ones. It comes free with the Pure Mix subscription, along with a bunch of other plugins. But what I love about Mix-Up is that it has a plugin which I then have on my master output in Logic, and anywhere that a client leaves a timestamp comment on the song, it will take me to that timestamp in my Logic project. So it's super quick for me to do revisions. Yeah,
that's so sick. Actually,
it's brilliant. Yeah, super worth checking out. And it's
like
just
Frame.io, but for music producers. Because like Frame.io is a lot of like film guys use to like do like video edits and stuff on like larger. Yeah, I know I have a lot of friends in that world, so that's kind of my like relation to it. Dude, that's insane.
It's brilliant. And then I basically have that set up down the kind of right side of my screen. And then when I'm ready, once I bounce the song out, I can literally drag and drop the song into the plugin window, and it will upload it to Mix-Up as well. So it's just shortened this whole cycle of, let me look at this list, what timestamp was it? I'll click here and change that. It's like bing, bing, bing. I can rattle through revisions super quick and then upload it straight back to them. It's just, that's been a game changer for me.
You just changed my life.
Yeah.
You just changed my life. I'm gonna have to check that one out. That's crazy.
It's really good. I love it. And the thing about it is, it doesn't look, to me, this is such a small point, it doesn't look as nice as like Samply does. Samply looks really good and clean. The branding on it is the colors are a bit funky and all that, but just the ease of use, it just is leagues above everything else.
That's more of what
like,
I care about anyway. Like, it's all about like how it gets used, right? Like, it can look good all day, but like that integration is crazy. Anyway,
it's
sorry.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
I took us off on a tangent. So they would upload a thing to, you Dropbox. You say, all right, we're a good fit, and then
and then that's it. So they send me the files, I'll mix it, and I normally I try and keep my schedule about 70-80% full. So I'm never 100% booked out. So if a project comes in, or it comes in late, or there's revisions, I've always got time to work on them. But yeah, my typical turnaround time for a mix is like 5 to 7 working days, depending on how busy I am. And one of the game changers for me has been using these VSX to kind of mix on and reference. It just takes the room out of the equation, and I'm so much quicker and faster now that I'm mixing on these pretty much exclusively.
I was going to ask you about, we can get, continue. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. So I'll send them the revisions, and when I send the link to them to the mix up link, I also have a little email template which basically just says, there's like a few points in it being like, number one, this isn't mastered, but I've brought it up to a standard level so you can kind of compare it. And also say, like, can you listen to this on a minimum of 3 different speakers just so you can hear them in different spaces? And I also say, like, take your time, don't get back to me straight away, because if you sit and listen to it over a couple of days, more things will come to you. So all of those little systems I've got in place, like that little list for the email template, just makes the whole revision process a lot smoother. I'm not having to explain the same things over and over again. It lets them know the best way to listen to the song and get honest feedback from them. And it just speeds, by making it go a bit slower, it actually speeds up the revision process, because they're not like, here's the first 10 revisions, send it off, and then like, oh, here's another 10 I've just thought of. It's like, okay, I've listened to it. I thought initially I wanted the vocal louder, but actually now I've listened to it over here, it's okay. And so
it's the epitomization of the phrase slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
That's the one. Yeah. Exactly. That's literally how it feels. And I think just having that in place has helped me massively in terms of the revisions, number of revisions I have to do as well. So people are checking them on headphones, on speakers, on soundbars, in cars, just to get an approximation, and then they can think, all right, it sounded loud there, but it sounded quiet here, so maybe, split the difference or whatever. And then once I've got revisions back from them, I normally do them the next day or that day if I've got the time, if they're short. And so anything I can do to just speed the whole process up for them, because I don't want somebody sat at home twiddling their thumbs being like, where the hell is this mix free from Eliott? It's just like, all right, got revisions, send it straight back. And that's pretty much the whole process.
Dude, yeah, killer. That's very dialed in process. That's a good one. I feel like mine was dialed and then has gotten away from me over time. You know what I mean? It's like over time, you're like, things change, and you make little like inconsistencies here and there, and then stuff just gets away from you, and you're like, I really need to sit down and just like reconfigure some of this stuff and just make sure everything's locked. I would love. How long have you had your VSX? I would love to talk about your VSX stuff.
I've had them for a long time, but it's weird. I've had them for about 4 or 5 years, but I've only really started using them properly, I would say, in the last year or two.
Okay, so same. I got mine about 8 to 10 months ago.
Right.
And I started trying to work on transitioning to them.
Yeah, they're just, what it was for me is that I felt like I could mix on these speakers fine, and I can. But what was happening was, once I started using these properly about a year ago, and I would say the reason I started using them properly is because before I wasn't a massive fan of chopping and changing rooms. I thought that's what I had to do to use them well. Try it in this room, try it in that room. But what I found is, like, I'll just stick to the Archon mids. That is the speakers. If I just learn them, because what my brain couldn't handle, I'm putting on a pair of headphones, but the room's different. I wanted this to be the sound of the headphones, so I've just stuck with that. And I've actually also used the onboard. There's an EQ. There's a 5-band EQ that you can kind of tonally shape the output. And I've actually done a little high shelf and a little high mid cut, I think, on the Archon mids, because I found there was just like this nasaliness that I didn't really like, and I was always cutting that out of mixes, but then when I was listening to references, it was always more pronounced. So I was like, okay, well, let me just cut that in my headphones.
Is it the same place that the vocals are sitting?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that
you know it,
dude. So That is actually my favorite speaker also. That is the ones I swap between those and the full room of those. Those are the only two. I use other ones sometimes, but like those are the main two I always start on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same exact thing as like I will have this weird thing where I was having this weird thing where I felt like my vocals were getting like built up over by the track. And I bet that's what it is it's that like 1 to 2.5K, like I just need to do a little notch right there.
Yeah, and what made me think about this, I was watching a video on somebody talking about tuning their room and their speakers, and he was like, there's room correction, but then there's also tuning your speakers to sound good in your room. So like adding a bit more low end or adding a bit more high end if you're missing it. And I was like, oh, okay, VSX has that built in. And like, I loved the sound of the Arcom Is, but there was always this problem with the vocals. And I was also always mixing things a little bit too bright. So I was like, okay, so if I just make it a little bit brighter and cut this mid thing, I will stop over-correcting in my mixes, and that's been a game changer for me. So yeah, the reason that's why I started using them more and more. And what I was finding was I was started mixing on my speakers, and I'd mix for 2-3 hours on them. I'd take a break, and then I'd come back and put the headphones on, and then I was like, I need to make all these changes. There was so many things I was chopping and changing and trying different stuff, and I just thought, why don't I just start on the headphones? And yeah, basically since then I can mix a song easily in a day, no problem, where before it was like I felt the need to mix over 2-3 days because I felt like I wasn't, it was taking longer. Things were taking longer. I wasn't hearing things properly. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about the VSX, honestly.
I love mine. There's like a couple things that I'm like kind of hit or miss about. But I'll get to that in a second. My process with them has been I start on my speakers because I'm the most comfortable with them.
Yeah.
When I'm building the track out, so like getting all the stems and making sure I got like the basics of things, like kind of routed and all that kind of stuff, I start on my speakers, mainly so I don't overdo these a little bit.
Yeah.
And then do initial tonal shapes there.
Right.
And then I go to my headphones to do like the microscopic like things that nobody will probably hear, but that makes the ultimate difference.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was for me. And I was realizing I could make half dB cuts or moves on EQs, and I could hear them on this. And I've treated my room, and I've got Sonarworks, which I actually don't really like anyway. And I actually I was trying to do similar things, and you just can't hear. You can't hear what you can't hear, Yep. And my room's basically a box. It's 3 meters by 3 meters, so it's not ideal. I've treated it as best I can, but still, I'm dealing with a room
mixing in a box like me, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
So
yep.
It's just like I got over my fear of being like, oh, I need to mix on speakers. I was like, no, if I just, instead of starting on the speakers and then undoing a load of stuff that I've done, why don't I start on the headphones? And now it's just, these are my speakers now. So the added bonus is I've got a sit-stand desk, so I can basically stand at my desk the majority of the day, and I feel like I'm being a bit healthier, rather than just sitting in a chair the whole time.
Dude, I was literally thinking the other day, how can I get a sit-stand desk to go in the studio?
It's incredible.
Dude, I want to be able to stand so bad. I also have this output desk, this the massive desk, and I was like, I don't know if I can put it on a lift because this thing is freaking massive.
It's heavy.
God, I just had to move it. We did our floors in our house, and the other room where the studio is, we swapped our room in my bedroom, and the studio bedroom. So we had the studio room and the bedroom we swapped, and taking this thing apart and putting it back, I was like, I will never. This thing is not moving from this spot right here.
This is where it
again.
lives now.
It is not. I will burn this house to the ground with this around it before I have to move this thing again. Oh my gosh, it was awful.
Yeah, it was a weighty thing.
Oh God, dude.
You might be able to get some strong enough legs if you wanted. Like the ones that I got, again, I forked out for. So with sit-stand desks, you can have two. They call two-way ones or three-way ones. So mine's got 3 moving parts, so it's a lot sturdier. I was thinking, if I'm going to have my iMac on here and other stuff, I don't want it wobbling off. And I've got my speakers off on stands, so they're not even on the desk. But you could totally get a heavy-duty sit-stand desk that would be able to lift your speakers and your whole desk and get you in the standing position. And then, you can mix on these, or you can mix on your speakers. But Yeah,
Well,
well worth it.
like I said, I like starting there mainly because it's like easing me into the session, and I can do major problems there. But like when it's time to fine tune and like get everything. Really, when you start what I would consider like the heavy lifting of the mixing work, I switch to these. The overarching like, let's get my 2-bus setup and bus routing, and is this going to be too bright or dark to start? And I can kind of do that on these speakers. Or how's the drums feeling? Get an overall balance to like start the mix, but then swap over to these. The thing I hate about these is how much quieter they get whenever the plugin's on. That bothers me to no end. You
have to adjust your headphone setting and just.
I have to crank up the output on the plugin every single time, and I need to make the preset to where it's already there. I need to do an A/B, like a null test or an A/B test on it to like get it to the exact same decibel volume on the output, and just be like, never move again.
Yeah, and just leave it at that point. And I'll tell you what, the pain I have with them is, especially when it comes to like tracking, because of the latency. I'm using, like I mentioned before we start recording, I use Audio Hijack to host the VSX plugin, but the latency is mad. So then I do that, I bypass it, and I change the headphone outputs on my Apollo Twin, but then it's like jacked up 12 dB, so I've got to turn it down. First world problems, really, but it's
for sure.
Yeah, it's still.
But when you're working fast, it actually is a major problem because it's like an interrupt in the pattern of like the train of thought. So sure, first world problems, but also problems that we actually kind of need to solve for the way that our brains need to work. Because if I'm thinking, oh, I need to get this, I need to retract this thing, or I need to get this thing done, or we got to do whatever. And then I go to start doing that thing, and now I have to think about, well, I got to remove this thing. I got to remove this thing. I get lost in the minutia of like actually trying to set myself up to do the thing rather than going from need to do the thing. Now I'm doing the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And anything, like you say, anything you can do to limit that is worth it. And one of those things that just reminded me of when I first got SonarWorks as well. I used to have it on the output of my Logic project, and I think still don't think they have this set in Logic, but I used to bounce with it on all the time. And
dude.
And it's just like, oh, fuck's sake, I've sent this mix off to an artist. They're like, it sounds really weird. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I listen, I'm like, right, it had fucking SonarWorks on it.
Yeah. I am glad that VSX has that auto like bounce, like turn off thing, or bypass, auto export bypass or whatever. It is that one's massive for me, because I straight up, I think for the first month that I had it, I kept forgetting, because I like turning it off anyway, just as like a, just in case, like what if it doesn't do it this time? Kind of thing. And so I always turn it off anyway, but I will go back to a session and be like, I bounced this and I did not turn it off like multiple times. I'm like, I'm so glad that is built into that, so I don't have to
smart.
deal with it. Super. I'm also amazed at it that you can hear sub frequencies like surprisingly well with these. That was the other thing. I came from previously Biodynamic DT990s, the open back ones, and they were great. I could hear sub frequencies in that, and so like I have smaller speakers, I'm not going to hear sub frequencies as well, and then so sometimes I would make like I would do the ghost thing where it's like, I think there's too much sub frequency here, so I'm going to lessen it. In fact, I completely neuter the mix, or I can't hear any sub frequency and it feels pretty good. And in fact, my sub is just bearing through my two bus and just nuking my mix whenever I turn it on in the car. And so I am pretty impressed with like how well down low these get for like actually being able to hear. And like, it's also something that I had to get used to.
Yeah.
Coming from working in previously studios with subs in them, having to like understand what hearing subfrequencies is like rather than feeling subfrequencies in a room.
Yeah, that's so true. It, like you say, it approximates it really well, but it's a completely different feeling from having it like hit you in the chest, or you're feeling the desk vibrate. But I don't know if you've had this, but legit sometimes feel like my desk is vibrating or my floor is vibrating when I'm listening on the headphones. I'm like, it's definitely not, but it's my body feeling like there must be some frequencies in the room because I'm feeling it and I'm hearing it. It's some mad voodoo they've got going on in them. And again, it only keeps getting better and better. So it's a brilliant way of working. And I know people that, take their laptops on trains and stuff to do mixed tweaks and things like that. And, it's just only going to keep getting better. And it's the cheapest pair of, they're like $400 or £400, I think, which is cheaper than a pair of monitors, cheaper than trying to put up a bunch of, treatment in your room and then still not being able to have a flat room to mix it. And it's,
I think I paid for it with PayPal credit on mine and I used PayPal credit to buy it and had it paid off before the interest hit. So it's like, perfect. Yeah, it's great. It's I always tell, even the cheaper one, if you want to start with the cheaper one, because it's like what, $200, $300,
something like that. Yeah,
and it's like so worth it for that. As like a singer songwriter or producer, like to work in a room where you don't have to worry about getting speakers and being loud. And a lot of people can't afford that because a lot of people are working in apartments or working in duplexes or working with children in the house or like a significant other in the house. And like you can't just be blaring your stuff at all hours of the night, but sometimes you got to like have it loud to get the feeling right. And so like have this being a really great option for those people as well on the lower end pricing tier. Maybe you're not doing it professionally, but you're trying to get the best quality you can before you send it to somebody like me or you to like get it across the finish line.
Yeah, definitely. I'd highly recommend it. And I haven't actually had this happen yet, but I was just thinking about it. Like technically, we could be doing like a remote revision session, and you've got your VSX, I've got my VSX. We could be listening to the same room, so we're hearing the exact same mix. That you'll never get that unless you were sat in this room with me.
Dude, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So like we would be listening to the exact same mix, it's how it would sound. It's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't even think about that because they wouldn't even have to own the more expensive headphones if you're using something like Audio Movers or something like that, like to get the straight off your master bus sent to them. All they would have to have is the headphones because the headphones would theoretically process it in the same way. Now, will it actually do that? Not 100% sure, but it's a great idea to test actually.
Yeah, exactly. And then you could do a remote revision session and be like, yeah, this is working. We're hearing the same thing. It's not like, oh, I hear a ton of sub. Why am I not hearing it? Or vice, whatever it is. So,
or why does it have this really weird mid-rangey like thing to it?
Yeah, this weird thing going on. But so long rant about the VSX, but they should definitely endorse us both because that'll be amazing.
100% slate.
Yeah, exactly.
My email inbox is open. I'm a big fan of at least of this stuff. Don't necessarily love your plugin subscription, but we'll take the MO1 stuff and the VSX stuff as wild advancements in the world of home studio work.
For sure.
Eliott, is there anything you would like to tell the people at home, and maybe like some piece of advice that you're getting from like working with all of these artists, something that maybe they work with you or maybe they work with another mix engineer or something like that you've learned from working with all of these people over the years, something that you see, a piece of advice that you could send to all the people that might be listening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would probably say you're doing a lot better than you think you are, and your music sounds a lot better than you probably think it does. And do not be put off by the fact you don't have all the most expensive gear and you don't have all of these outboard preamps and compressors and all this stuff. Like, you can make great music at home with a simple microphone and a pair of VSX, and you're away. And then there are people like me and Drew in the world who you can send your stuff to, and we'll make it sound as good as possible. But don't ever let not having tech get in the way of creativity, because there has never been a better time to make music than now. So yeah, do never feel put down by that.
That's beautiful. Eliott, where do you want to send people if they want to find more out about you?
Yeah, best place is my Instagram, Eliott Glinn Audio. And then I'm happy to chat with anyone about music, business, any kind of stuff like that. I'm always happy to nerd out about it. So yeah, come say hey, and I'd love to have you there. Love it, dude. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, mate. And it's always good chatting shop. Yeah, always. Listeners, go follow Eliott.
We loved having you here, and listeners, thanks so much for listening again. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll see you guys next week. Later.